Okay, so first I'd like to start with just a brief introduction, and then we have some poll questions. Looks like three poll questions. If I could get you guys to, this group to answer them. I know that there's folks are kind of huddled around one screen maybe that, it shows one person here, but there might be 5 people present. So just kind of answer the questions as best you can as a group. The poll questions. I will have some questions at the end of this presentation that I'm just going to throw out to you guys, and I'd like you to discuss as a group, and then I'll answer them for you. But once we get there, I'll talk about that a little bit more. So first off, let me introduce myself. My name is Ross. I am the Workforce Development Coordinator for the Arkansas Department of Transportation. I earned my bachelor's degree from the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia and my master's in construction management from UA Little Rock. I've been with RDOT for 5 years. I started out in systems information and research as a research assistant. I was there for about 1.5 years, and then I moved over to a health and safety officer. I was the health and safety officer for District 6, District 9, and Central Office for 3 years. And then last October, I moved into the Workforce Development Coordinator position. Both the Health and Safety Officer and the Workforce Development Coordinator, they're both under the Health and Safety section here at RDOT. We're going to be, hanging out together for the next couple of days. I'm going to be talking to you about traffic control. Today I'm going to discuss basic flagging, and essentially we're just going to learn how to become good flaggers. Tomorrow I'll be discussing temporary traffic control in work zones. The information that we go over today and the information that we go over tomorrow is going to overlap quite a bit. That's because you kind of can't have one without the other, right? So don't roll your eyes too much when you hear me talk about flagger tapers, a lot these next couple of days. Just take it as an opportunity to get familiar, because it is in the case of flagger taper, we're going to talk about that a lot. I don't anticipate needing the full 2 hours both days. Tomorrow we might, get right up to that 2-hour point, but I would, don't get excited that you're going to get out after an hour, but we probably won't go the full 2 hours. If you have any questions, type them in the chat pod. I can see them. It's difficult for me to present and look at the same time, but Stacy's here with me, and Stacy will give me a shout out and say, hey, we got a question about this, and we can go from there. But most importantly, don't hesitate to ask questions. I am I'm presenting on a laptop, and then I'm logged in on a desktop through my personal email, so I'll kind of be going back and forth to make sure everything's working like it should be. As with all virtual training that I've attended and presented in, there's always technical difficulties. Today's not special. Okay, so let's start with the poll questions. Stacy, you want to throw those out there?
All right, here's the first one you should see on your screen now. All right, it looks like all of the votes are in. I'm going to go ahead and close that and then share the results. So it looks like about 75% said that yes, they have been a flagger before. 25% said no.
Okay, great. That's good.
All right, you ready for the next poll question?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. All right, after this class, what will your role be? Flagger, supervisor, or both? All right, I'll give that one just a couple of more seconds. Looks like not quite everyone has completed it. All right, I'm going to close this one and share the results. So it looks like about 20% will do the flagging, 50% will be supervisors, and 30% will be both.
Again, another good mixture. That's great. And that is it for our poll questions today. Okay. Okay, good. So we've got folks from all over the place. They're going to be moving into roles, you know, again, all over the place. Before I get started, here is my contact information. If anybody has any questions after the next couple days are over, you can reach me at this email address. And, you know, I guess if you have a question or a comment, you know, just in the title and the heading, just CTTP training, just so I know what I'm looking at. So I'll give you a second to write that down or screenshot it or take a picture of it, and then we'll get started. And does everybody know? Everybody should know, but on the sidebar where you type questions, there's also a raise hand feature. If you have any questions that you want answered, or you're trying to get my attention or Stacy's attention, using that raise hand feature is a good place to start. Or you can just type a message, or do both if it's you know, if we don't notice you right away. Okay, moving along. So you have been chosen for the job of flagging because your supervisor feels you are physically able, mentally alert, sufficiently commanding, in appearance to properly control traffic through construction, maintenance, and utility work areas. As a flagger, your duties are to protect project personnel and provide safe, courteous, and authoritative direction to traffic seeking passage through the work area. The objective of this course is to learn how to be a safe and effective flagger. At the end of this course, you will be able to describe why proper flagger operations are important, list the abilities of a good flagger, use standard references as they pertain to flagger control, know proper flagging signals and procedures, and know flagger practices for various types of situations. So let's start off with what depends on you. Well, first and foremost, the folks working need your protection. You're the first line of defense to the folks working behind you in the work zone. Motorists, they need you. They need your guidance. Pedestrians, similar to motorists, they're going to need your guidance as well. You know, there's potential for pedestrian crosswalks to come across temporary traffic control zones, and you're going to need to know how to navigate those pedestrians through there. You know, within a parameter. You're not a crossing guard, but you know, your role will help them. Same goes with bicyclists and children. They may pass through a temporary traffic control zone as well. There may be a bike path. You know, again, you're not trained to direct students in a school crossing. In a lot of areas, that's a program that employs cross guards. How about equipment and materials? You also need to protect those. Both equipment and materials are expensive, and we don't want anything to happen to that investment. You have the power to affect people's lives. Did you know that each year hundreds of people are killed or injured in temporary traffic control zones? Thousands are injured and millions of dollars are lost in property damage. The decisions that you make and the actions you take can be the difference between life and death. So, you know, think of it like this too. The facilities being built are part of our national infrastructure. You are protecting our nation's infrastructure by being a flagger. Also, you know, not only are you protecting our nation's infrastructure, you're protecting your investments. You know, your taxpayer money goes into building these roads, you know, fixing the right of way. So you're protecting your investment as well. You know, don't forget yourself. you're protecting yourself. You're making sure that you get home safely in one piece at the end of the day by practicing good basic flagging skills. What else? Can you think of anything else, motivating to do your job well? How about pride and professionalism? How about pay, job security? If if you do a good job as a flagger, you could take on more responsibilities and more active role in temporary traffic control zones. Oftentimes, or ideally, right, if you take on more responsibility, there's more pay involved. So, those can be motivating factors as well. And not to scare you, but you should also consider liability too. Lawsuits are real, and you should consider the ramifications should an accident happen. What if there's an accident and the victim's paralyzed, or something worse? Because the flagger, sent them in oncoming traffic, didn't follow correct flagging procedures. These are, real considerations that should be taken and should motivate you to be a good flagger. What are the abilities of a good flagger? Well, because of everything I just mentioned, flaggers are responsible for public safety and make contact with the public. They need to be trained in safe traffic control practices and public contact techniques. Flaggers need to be able to receive and communicate specific instructions clearly, firmly, and courteously. Move and maneuver quickly to avoid the danger from errant vehicles. You got to be quick on your feet when you're a flagger. You not only quick on your feet, but quick to react too. You got to be able to observe things that are happening in real time when you're out there on the right of way, controlling traffic. You need to be able to use your paddles and flags, effectively. You need to know the correct signaling, and you need to know the correct hand gestures that go with the signaling of those paddles and flags. You need to understand and apply safe traffic control practices, sometimes in stressful or emergency situations. This is especially true. So, all flagging can be stressful, but especially in those emergency flagging situations. You need to recognize dangerous traffic control solutions and warn workers in sufficient time to avoid injury as well. So let's talk about standards and guidelines. Everything we're going to talk about today can be found in a number of places, but its origins are in the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, or better known as the MUTCD. You may have worked with the MUTCD before, or you may have worked with your local best standard practices. But everything originates from the MUTCD. Even OSHA pulls their temporary traffic control information from the MUTCD. The MUTCD is a document that is required by federal law to be prepared and published by the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration. It changes frequently and is published primarily for state DOT use. Each state is required to use this manual or one of their own design for all traffic control on streets and highways under all circumstances. Flag. So MUTCD, it's basically the Bible of traffic control. The flagger control is just one part of it, and it's covered in Chapter 6. These standards may also be found in state and local standards and guidelines. These are standards and guidelines that are particular to the state and area in which you will be working in as a flagger. If you will be working in a number of different areas, you may be required to work according to those local standards and guidelines. The standards and guidelines can also be found in the contract plans. These are documents that are prepared most commonly by the agency for whom the work is being performed. They show drawings and descriptions of the specific conditions of the project. They'll, a lot of times they'll go over temporary traffic control signs, the flagger placement. They can get very specific. There's also special provisions. These are detailed noted instructions or detailed drawings showing special conditions of a project and the temporary traffic control plans. These are drawings and notes that describe how the traffic control for a special project should be handled. And just to show you what the MUTCD looks like, here's my old ragged MUTCD. So, just give you an idea of size and scale, it's about 11 by 9. It's about 2 inches thick. There are 9 parts. The 9 parts are kind of chapters. But, in total, the 9 parts, there's 800 plus pages in this thing. So these 9 parts, they're pretty big parts. And mine's, like I said earlier, I was the health and safety officer for District 6, District 9, and central office. District 6 is kind of give you an idea of where that is geographically. District 6 is central Arkansas. It's Little Rock and Hot Springs, primarily north up to Hazen, Desark, Hazen. District 9 is the area headquarters out of Harrison, but it goes all the way over to Siloam Springs and down into Marshall. Includes Rogers, not Fayetteville, and down into Marshall. So these are really big areas. I was on the road all the time. This thing went along with me everywhere. Did tailgate talks, safety meetings, went to area headquarters for discussions. Discussions with maintenance folks, crew leaders, supervisors, even engineers. Again, this is the Bible of temporary traffic control. You can see that the last time it was updated in 2009, and this is the most recent MUTCD out there. Right? Yeah. Now I've been told that it's going to update soon, but I've been told that for a lot of years. So we'll see. Until they do, this is it. An easy way to remember, just kind of, the standard, kind of some standard key points about flagging is the flagger ABCs. Okay. So before you start flagging, you need to have your advanced warning signs out. You need to be visible and alert at all times, and you need to control traffic with the appropriate procedures. So, advanced warning signs out, be visible, control traffic with the appropriate procedures. You can remember those 3 things, you're on the right track. Okay, now we're going to get into some of the practical parts of, temporary traffic control and flagging. Before you can flag, you need to know what a temporary traffic control zone is. So the entire area where traffic is affected is called the temporary traffic control zone. It includes the area from the first sign drivers see until the very last device or drivers know to return to normal traffic patterns. There are 4 primary areas that make up traffic control or the traffic control zone that are important for the flagger to understand. For most things throughout this course, and for the most part tomorrow, we're going to look at this specific type of temporary traffic control zone because it applies most to flaggers. It is called the one lane two-way traffic condition or traffic control zone, or mostly referred to as the flagger taper. So what we're looking at here and throughout this course is the flagger taper. I'm just going to refer to it as a flagger taper. It's a lot easier to say, and essentially everybody knows what I'm talking about. But when we're talking about the component parts of a temporary traffic control zone, you have the advanced warning area, the transition area, the activity area, and the termination area. And here we're looking at, with each one, I'll get my pointer out. There's a pointer. So here we are, the advanced warning area, transition area, activity area, and termination area. Don't squint your eyes too hard looking at this. We're going to talk about them all 4 in detail. More briefly, let's go over tapers though. So what is a taper? Taper is a series of channelizing devices or pavement markings placed so they provide visual guidance to the motorist to help move traffic out of its normal path. Taper length is the distance that will provide the driver sufficient time to move safely into the proper lane. And here's the one-lane two-way taper, also called the flagger taper. I just want to show it to you in, better detail. Looks like you can see, I'm looking at it on my other screen, and it looks like you can see it okay. It's the most common taper used in flagging operations. You'll need to know more about tapers if you're required to place traffic control devices and make sure they are set properly. But being familiar with this and other types of tapers, especially when we talk about them tomorrow, you be familiar, because if you feel something is not right, you need to notify your supervisor immediately that something isn't set up right. All right, so the advanced warning area. The advanced warning area is the first indication to motorists they are about to enter a work zone. Signs are primarily used to communicate several things to the motorist. The first sign, so if traffic is coming this way, right, and this is going to be considered the first sign. So this is the first sign motorists see. It's a warning sign is placed. Generally, the road work ahead sign is used for that first sign. Sometimes they'll substitute that out with a distance instead of ahead. So road work, 1,000 feet ahead or something like that. This is there to alert motorists that they are approaching a work zone. The second sign is placed to inform motorists of what is expected ahead. So, for example, one lane road ahead, or similar to the road work ahead, one lane road 500 feet. Okay, that's also acceptable. And then the third sign should be the flagger. The third sign is placed to tell motorists what to do. So, there's a flagger ahead, or the flagger ahead sign or distance. So flagger 300 feet ahead, or just the flagger man, as we'll call them. You'll also see that sign as well. But that flagger sign, it's telling motors, hey, there's a flagger there, and then that sign has to be up before you can even start flagging. So this is what the advanced warning in this box. This is the advanced warning sign. Omit this in roadwork sign. Okay. It's the one lane two-way taper because traffic is using one lane to travel both ways. So traffic is coming this way and the road work ends over here, okay? Similarly, traffic is coming this way and the road work ends over here. But just in the advanced warning area, we're looking at these three advanced signs prior to the flagger. All right. Okay, so a little bit more on the advanced warning area. The distance, so the sign spacing or the distance between each sign in the advanced warning area is depending on road volume type. This table 6C-1 is found in the MUTCD. Like I said earlier, flagger and really all temporary traffic control is found in part 6 of the MUTCD. And you can find this chart in there. I'd like to also say that you can, or this table, I mean, you can find the MUTCD online for free. It's accessible to anybody. I mean, just Google MUTCD. And you could even get more specific. Google table 6C-1, MUTCD, all this information. It's not secret information. It's very accessible information. So don't, if you have questions and you don't want to, if you have an MUTCD and you don't feel like pulling out this big old book, just Google it. But here we're talking about the distance between each sign. So the distance between, this road work ahead, one lane road ahead, flagger man sign, okay, in the advanced warning area. That's all dependent on speed. So urban low speed is 100 feet between each sign. So 100 feet for roadwork ahead, 100 feet one lane road ahead, 100 feet between flagman ahead. Urban high speed. So urban low speed, and urban low speed is speed limits that are 40 miles per hour or less. The urban high speed is a road with a speed limit between 40 and 50 miles per hour. And rural roads have speed limits between 50 and 60. So looking at this chart, we have urban high speed. Okay, there's gonna be 350 feet between each sign. Rural will have 500 feet between each sign. Not included in this chart is an expressway, which is designated as having speed limits of 60 miles per hour or more. In those situations, you will have 1,500 feet between each sign, but the caveat to that is you're not going to have a flagger flagging on the expressway. You shouldn't have a flagger flagging on the expressway. That is really dangerous. Some folks might argue with me on that, and I would tell them to look at the MUTCD. All right, transition area is the area that follows the advanced warning area. So again, we're looking at the flagger taper. So, the standards that I'm going to talk about now are specific to the flagger taper. We'll talk more broadly about transition areas as we look at more tapers, and that'll be tomorrow's course. But for the transition area for the flagger taper, so the transition area follows the advanced warning area and is where the motorist is directed to travel in order to get through the work zone. Okay. Motorists need time to make changes in the roadway. So in order to provide time, we provide a distance. This distance is called the taper. This is the distance right here. It is a line of channelizing devices that is visible and provides driver. Length of the taper and taper length is measured along. So the taper length is measured along the line of travel, which is here. So you're not measuring this taper here, this diagonal. You're measuring, along this line here or along the shoulder. Flagger operations are normally done on roadways with speeds between 20 and 55 miles per hour. Again, if you start getting to 60 miles per hour, no flaggers, that's too dangerous. So the taper length is used in the range of 50 feet minimum to 100 feet maximum. At the lower range of speeds, the 50-foot taper may be used, with the longer taper being used as the speed increases. So essentially, lower traffic speeds, you want to have a shorter taper. Higher traffic speeds, you want to have a longer taper. And that's to give motorists the time to, more time to stop, right? The faster they're going, the more time they need to stop. The devices typically used in a flagger operation are cones, but any other channelizing device may be used, drums, vertical panels, barricades, but you need to be familiar with your local standards and the traffic control plan too before you start making decisions about channelizing devices. So again, for the taper and the flagger taper, so this taper specifically to the flagger temporary traffic control, this whole thing, 50 to 100 feet is always the standard for the flagger taper. Okay. When we get into other tapers, this is going to change in length because you start getting into some different you start getting into some equations, and driver travel speed comes more into play. But for the flagger taper, it is always 50 to 100 feet. All right. And we're going to talk about that in more detail here in a little bit. So we have the advanced warning area, the transition area. The next area of the traffic control zone is the activity area. The activity area follows the transition area and is made up of the workspace and the longitudinal buffer zone. The workspace is where all the manpower, equipment, maneuver room, storage materials are contained. The space is determined by the project and is generally not the responsibility of the flagger to determine how much space you're going to need for the activity area. The workspace is preceded by a distance called the buffer space. It is an area or a space in distance providing the motorists that may have lost control of their vehicle to recover and stop as necessary before entering the workspace. The space is always empty of any objects and could cause damage to vehicles or occupants. So at this stage of the game of the MUTCD, the buffer space is not required in temporary traffic control zones. Okay, it's an option. It's recommended, but it's not always feasible to have one. Space is always an issue when you're working on the road. So sometimes a buffer space isn't an option. But if you do have one, and it's recommended that you do if you can, there's nothing in it. All right. The activity area. So get my old pointer out here. So here's the buffer space. Nothing in it, right? And this box with lines in it, diagonal lines, this is considered the activity space. There's nothing in here. This is where everything goes. So, you know, when your supervisor is determining what is the activity area, he or she needs to take all that into consideration. If they want a buffer space, excellent. And in that activity area, that's where all the stuff goes. A little bit more about the buffer space. So again, here's another table found in the MUTCD. It's table 6E-1. It's got a really fun name, stopping sight distance as a function of speed, or more easily known as the buffer space table. So the distance to use for the buffer space is determined from the data shown in this table. Stopping sight distance as a function of speed. It is often called the buffer space table. So first, it's real easy, right? If it didn't have a complicated name, just, hey, go to the buffer space table. Well, what's the speed limit? It's 20 miles per hour. Okay, that buffer space needs to be 115 feet long. And that's all there really is to it. Generally, flagger tapers are going to take up, we're going to be in a travel way with speed limits of 50 miles per hour. So that buffer space is going to be 425 feet. It's not a difficult table to read. Just that sometimes that title will throw folks off. But I bet if you Googled buffer space table, I bet this would pop up. And lastly is the termination area. Termination area. So in the termination area, information is provided to the motorist to indicate that traffic has come to the end of the project. A sign such as end road work or end utility work or whatever activity is taking place that the temporary traffic control plan recommends is placed, at the end of in the termination area at the end of the temporary traffic control zone. It needs to be clearly visible, but similar to the buffer space, this is not required. It is recommended, but you don't have to have one out there. But if you do have one out there, it needs to be clearly visible, clearly indicate what is happening. A termination taper or downstream taper, when necessary, it helps folks move back into the regular travel path. If used similar to the flagger taper at the transition area, so we said this is 50 to 100 feet. That termination taper is also 50 to 100 feet. Okay, really easy to remember. All right, so channelizing devices. Channelizing devices means delineation of the edges of the travel path that provides a visual guidance to the driver. It is equipment used to divert traffic from its normal path. Channelizing devices are essentially cones, drums, tubular markers, and barricades. I'm sure everybody here is familiar with cones, drums, tubular markers, and barricades, but like I said earlier, depending on the situation you're in and what the traffic control plan recommends will determine what channelizing devices you use. We'll talk about each one of these, real briefly. First off, cones, probably the most familiar channelizing device there is. Even the layman knows what a cone is, but most cones are predominantly orange. In fact, most signs and devices in a temporary traffic control zone are orange. It's the main color, synonymous with construction and maintenance. Why do you think these colors are important to channelizing devices? Well, they allow the device to be seen and to stand out. Cones must be a minimum height to be seen as well. They must be at least 28 inches high on high-speed roads. So roadways where the speed limit is 45 miles per hour or more. Or they need to be 28 inches for nighttime work as well. And they need to be at least 18 inches tall on other types of roadways. If cones are used at night, they need to be seen, so they must be either lit externally or retroreflective. In fact, I've actually seen cones that are internally lit. If anybody has any questions about what retroreflective means, if you wear a safety vest, you probably know what retroreflective means. But essentially, retroreflective material is light from a source will bounce off an object and return to the source. Most cone manufacturers will put bands of white retroreflective material around the top of the cone. While not required for daytime work, nighttime work requires some form of light retroreflective internally, externally. Lastly, cones. They need to be made from a flexible material that won't damage a car too much if they hit them. Cones can still do some damage, though. They're not. It's not like a pillow fight. Signs. Other temporary traffic control devices you'll see on the job are signs. There are three basic types of signs: regulatory, warning, and guide signs. Regulatory signs enforce legal requirements. So we're talking about a stop sign or a speed limit sign. Warning signs alert drivers to specific hazards. So we're talking about a flagger ahead sign or flagger man sign. And guide signs give drivers information. So in that case, we're talking about an in-road work sign. Signs have different shapes and colors, which convey different meanings. So again, we're gonna, what meaning does an orange sign convey? Temporary traffic control. And for the most part, temporary traffic control signs are diamond shaped. Okay, traffic control plan. So kind of hit on this already a little bit. The traffic control plan may show the exact sign required or refer to a number sign in the MUTCD. You'll need to check the plans or ask your supervisor to ensure the correct sign will be used. Essentially, the traffic control plan tells the person setting up the traffic control what needs to be where in what location. Before you get out on the road, you should have a traffic control plan. I know that doesn't always happen, but it should. And the traffic control plan doesn't need to be this, this drawing done on CAD, that's colored and numbered, and it doesn't have to be anything, too detailed. It just needs to, but it needs to give a framework of what needs to go where on the roadway. It not only does it need to have like what signs need to go where, but it also needs to say what that sign's facing is and how many channelizing devices are, along the buffer zone and the activity area. Is there a buffer zone? That also needs to be in the traffic control plan. Is there a termination taper? That needs to be in the traffic control plan. It just needs to go over what the fundamentals are before you get out there, so you know what you're doing, so there's no confusion, right? Because when there's confusion, accidents happen. And the last place, you know, you don't ever want an accident to happen, but you really don't want an accident to happen when you're out there on the roadway. All right, we're about 45 minutes into the class. I say we go ahead and let's take a 10-minute break. Well, let's take a 5-minute break. So I've got 9:42. Let's be back at 9:47, 48. So, you know, stretch, and I'll see you guys here in a little bit. If you have any questions, type them in the chat pod. Thank you. All right, we are back. Everybody should be back. Looks like everybody is. Can everybody hear me okay?
Something's going on my
Assuming everybody can hear me okay. Nobody said I can't hear you. So, we will keep going. So next thing we're going to talk. So far we've basically talked about why you need to be a good flagger and what makes up a temporary traffic control zone. And we've been focusing primarily on the flagger taper or the 2-lane, 1-lane, 2-way taper. Now we're going to move into what you need to have out there with you as a flagger. So first we'll hit on equipment or apparel. For daytime work, the flagger vest, shirt, or jacket shall be either fluorescent orange, red, or fluorescent yellow, green as defined in the standards. RDOT, so I can speak to RDOT. We use the fluorescent orange, but I know contractors really like the kind of the fluorescent green, fluorescent yellow. Your agency or your municipality is going to determine, is going to tell you what you need to wear, and it doesn't matter the color. Okay, but it needs to be, within that range of colors. But it's whatever color your agency or municipality tells you is what you'll wear. For nighttime work, similar to outside garments, they need to be retroreflective. The retroreflective material shall be either orange, yellow, white, silver, yellow, green, or fluorescent version of these colors, and shall be visible at a minimum of 1,000 feet. Apparel for daytime and nighttime needs to be ANSI Class 2 standard. For nighttime work, it's encouraged that you use a Class 3 standard, but it's not mandatory. And that's always surprising. I mean, I've been saying that for years. It's still surprising every time I say it. Now, for RDOT, we require Class 3 no matter what. So, and really the difference between a Class 2 safety vest and a Class 3 safety vest is sleeves. So Class 3 has sleeves that come down to your elbow, and that just gives more opportunity for more retroreflective striping. So on the sleeves, so you have them on the vest part and on the sleeve part. So yeah, you have to have at least Class 2 no matter the situation, but it's advised that you use Class 3 at night. Your agency may go beyond the standards set by the MUTCD. For retroreflective raincoats and retroreflective winter weather apparel, those are going to have more opportunity, more space for retroreflective areas, and that's going to go above the Class 2 and potentially above the Class 3. That's okay. You're always allowed to go beyond. The MUTCD just sets the bare minimum of requirements. You can always do more. That's absolutely allowed. So like I said, your agency may go beyond the standards set by the MUTCD, so it is important to check for specific apparel and equipment standards. Good example of this is steel-toed boots, or specific colored hard hats. Your agency may require you to wear steel-toed boots no matter what, or they may say, well, in certain places you just need to have boots on. They don't necessarily need to be steel-toed. It's it'll be your responsibility and really your supervisor too to kind of determine what has to be out there given the situation. What about hard hats? Yeah, well, the MUTCD does not require hard hats when you're out there on the road, but OSHA does, or the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They do if there's overhead work. RDOT, again, I can only speak to RDOT really, but we don't require hard hats all the time when you're out on the roadway. We do require it when there's overhead work happening. But hard hats protect you and they make you more visible, right? If you have a big yellow hard hat on and you got a big orange class 3 vest on, and maybe you're wearing high visibility pants as well, just the more opportunity you have to make yourself visible, the better, the better you're in, the safer you are, because drivers can see you. And, actually folks that you're working with as well, it'll be noticeable to them as well. If they're worn at night, they also need to be retroreflective. I'm a big advocate for hard hats. I know that in the past folks have said, well, they're just going to fall off your head, or, they don't really protect you if you've been hit by a car. Yeah, that's true. But, if a car drives by or an 18-wheeler drives by and it throws a piece of debris at you, and it comes between hitting you in the head or hitting you in the hard hat, which one do you want, right? Also, I don't know if you guys, but I don't know exactly what all your backgrounds are. I know a lot of you come from different local municipalities, but hard hats, the design of hard hats has really come a long way. I've been driving by the project that's happening on 30, so right there at the 30 bridge between Little Rock and North Little Rock. They're doing that. They're expanding the bridge, or they're replacing it actually. The contractors out there are wearing these like real cutting edge, state of the art hard hats. They have straps under the chins. That it's not like it used to be, where they just fly off your head. They don't look the same either. They have this kind of more advanced, look to them. We are making leaps and bounds in personal protective equipment. So it might be something to look into. Similarly, a modest or sloppy dress is not permitted. Remember that tidy appearance helps gain respect and makes your job more effective. RDOT's apparel and our highway safety manual says no sleeveless shirts, no shorts, no skirts, no skirts, or some kind of short skirt hybrid. Can't wear those either. No holes in your pants. Really need to be as clean as possible. Given what's taking place, they can only do so much. But looks like I have some questions. Stacy, do we have any questions here? No. Okay, never mind.
Ross,
All
we
right.
did have one comment about the class 3 not being required regardless of the speed limit. But I think you may have covered that after the question was posted. But just
Okay.
to clarify, that is based on the level of darkness, not the speed, correct?
Correct, right. Well, yeah, class 2 is required no matter the level of darkness or the speed. You always have to have a class 2 vest out there. A class 3 is recommended for nighttime work because it makes you more visible, but it has no dependence on, that class 3 has no dependence on speed limit. But, that's a good question. It seems like everything we're talking about is always dependent on speed, and there could be, why couldn't there be a correlation between personal protective equipment and speed limit?
All right, those are the only questions at this point.
Okay, great. Yeah, keep them coming. And actually, if I don't have an answer to a question, if you have a question, I can't answer it, I have got one of the senior health and safety officers sitting here right in front of me who can answer questions. His name's Jason, and he came out of maintenance and has been in the safety role for a long time. So he can always provide us with his insight. All right, moving
All right,
along.
Ross, I'm sorry to interrupt. We
Sure.
did have one comment from Greg that says OSHA requires class 3 at 55 miles per hour and up.
Okay, that is news to me. I wonder, is that a new standard, Greg? Do you, or is that something that you guys have done for a while, or is that? I don't know what I did here, but okay. You know, and part of the reason why I might not be really familiar with the OSHA standards in terms of that is RDOT is actually OSHA exempt. So, you know, there's some confusion there at times.
Okay, and so he said that he will find the reg and send it over to you.
Great, thank you.
Since
Appreciate
everyone online is muted, so we're just depending on the typing into the questions in the chat. So,
Right, great. Thanks, Greg, I appreciate that. Okay, so now let's talk about devices. Flaggers have standard, you know, so when you're a flagger, you have the standard combination stop slow paddle, which are at least 18 inches wide, and letters are at least 16 inches high. Sometimes they have flashing white lights. They may be used on the stop face of the paddle. Technical difficulties. So flashing white lights may be used on the stop face of the paddle. In emergencies, a bright red 24-inch flag on a 36-inch long staff may be used. You know, for even though you're called a flagger, we really only use a flagger in emergency situations. Now the stop slow paddle is what we use regularly when we're out on the roadway. When used at night, flags shall be retroreflective red. Nighttime flagging requires proper illumination of the flagger and equipment. Except in emergency situations, flagger stations may be illuminated at night. The stop slow paddles may be modified to improve visibility as well. Hand signalizing devices such as the stop slow paddles, lights, red flags are used to control road users through the traffic control zones. Stop slow paddle is the primary and preferred hand signalizing device because it gives road users more direct guidance. The use of red flags, like I said before, that's really only for emergency situations anymore. You know, again, flags when used shall be a minimum of 24 square inches, made of a good grade of red or fluorescent orange material, and securely fastened to a staff that is 36 inches in length. The free edge of the flag, of that emergency flag that you're going to be using, it needs to be weighted so that the flag hangs, it doesn't get tangled up in the staff. You know, it's windy, especially when traffic is going by, it can really kind of flip that material around. So if it's weighted, that it, you know, mitigates that risk. Again, you know, like when you're using a flag at night in an emergency situation, it's, you know, it needs to be retroreflective. So going back to the stop slow paddle, paddle shall have it needs to be octagonal in shape and with rigid handles. That paddles shall be at least 60 inches high and should be fabricated from a light semi-rigid material. The background of the slow face shall be orange with a black border and letters, or it can be red with white letter and borders as well. You know, they can be modified to improve visibility. I've seen some from different, you know, different companies that make personal protective equipment. They also make stop slow paddles. I mean, they can get really high tech, just like I was talking about with, with hard hats, they can be really retroreflective, and the whites can be really, really bright, and they've really come a long way, and it's totally acceptable to use those. I guess as long as it doesn't blind the driver, you don't want it to go overboard. But if you to use kind of these more advanced stop slow paddles is absolutely acceptable. What about personal comfort items? Okay, depending on the day, the situation, what's going on, you're going to want to have different things out there with you to, it can be pretty miserable flagging at times, and so let's try to make it as comfortable as possible. The bug spray, right? Especially in the summer, Arkansas can have some pretty rough mosquitoes, some pretty aggressive mosquitoes. Other things, ticks. A few years ago, I was doing a field inspection, and the flagger told me that he was standing away from any vegetation on the shoulder, and he was telling me that ticks were walking out of vegetation, across the shoulder to get to him. You're not going to be a good flagger if you're itching, you're getting bit, you're running from ticks. It's okay to have bug spray out there with you. Same with sunscreen. RDOT has become a huge advocate for sunscreen. We're giving sunscreen to all of our crews. We're doing safety meetings on sunscreen. You don't want to sit out there in a short sleeve shirt and no hat and just get baked by the sun in the summertime. Skin cancer is real, and you should do everything you can to mitigate that risk. Comfortable shoes versus sturdy work boots. I can only speak to RDOT, but we don't allow sneakers out there on the roadway. You need to have boots on. For flagger, we won't tell you they need to be steel-toed. They should be steel-toed, in my opinion, but that's up to your agency or your municipality to tell you what you need to have on. But regardless of steel-toed or not steel-toed, you need to make sure they're comfortable. You're never sitting down as a flagger, so you want something that you can stand in for the period of time that you have to stand out there. It could be a long period of time. It shouldn't be a long period of time. You should be rotating flaggers, but regardless, you don't want something miserable. You don't have to wear something that's going to make your feet miserable while you're standing out there. Just kind of piggybacking off sunscreen, it's a good idea to have a long sleeve shirt on. It's not going to be too hard to do when it's 25 degrees outside. When it's hot, sometimes you don't want to wear a long sleeve shirt, but this can just mitigate that risk of sunburn and, long skin damage from the sun later on down the road. You are allowed to have water out there. Weather gear is recommended too if it's raining. Also, a pen, pencil, and notepad is a good idea to have out there too. It's also a good idea to have a first aid kit nearby, just in case, right? We'll get into the pen and pencil and notepad, pen/pencil notepad more here in a second, and a few other things that are attached to that later on in this course. What not to use? I think I can tell you, everybody knows what they're not supposed to be using, but I'm going to reiterate. MP3 player, I hate that. Who has an MP3 player anymore? It's a smartphone. Everybody has a smartphone. MP3 player is almost like saying don't use your cassette player, for those of you who remember cassette players. No, but nothing, no listening devices, right? You don't want your headphones in. You're not rocking out or listening to a podcast or news, or your significant other yelling at you. Nothing to distract your hearing. You need your ears to hear traffic coming or to hear the workers behind you talking to you. This goes without saying. No alcoholic beverages. you know, that's no alcoholic beverages anywhere, right? No chairs, no reading materials. Sunglasses are discouraged, but there's some good points and some bad points on that. The good points is you can see better with sunglasses. The bad points are, as a flagger, you need to make eye contact with drivers, and it's a little more difficult to do with sunglasses on. That's kind of up to your discretion. And maybe you might have to go back and forth, but you know, that's how it's described in the MUTCD. You know, kind of going back to no MP3 players or radios, no cell phones, no texting, no talking on the phone. RDOT doesn't really want you smoking while you're out there or vaping while you're out there either. That's going to be up to your municipality. You know, you got to look professional out there. So, you know, if you're kind of kicking back, having a smoke, maybe that's not the best way to look professional, but that's up to your supervisor, your municipality to determine. Okay, so you are the flagger. You are out there. You've got your boots on. You got your vest on. You got your sunscreen on. You got your hat on. What else? What else do you need to do physically? Where do you need to be? How do you need to present yourself when you're out there? So we're going to talk about flagger position. Okay. So while on duty as a flagger, you must be alert at all times and be on your feet facing oncoming traffic. Okay. You always want to stand in a highly visible location, but never directly in the path of an approaching vehicle. Approaching traffic must be able to see you in plenty of time to react safely. So it's usually about 500 feet. The flagger should stand either on the shoulder, adjacent to the roadway, or in the closed lane. There's some nuance to that, and I'll get into that a little bit later. A flagger should be clearly visible to the first approaching road user at all times. The flagger should always be visible to other road users. The flagger should be stationed sufficiently in advance of the workers to warn them of danger from out of control vehicles. So, you know, you don't want that flagger station to be set up right next to the activity area. You need some space between you and the folks working. Flaggers should park their personal vehicle away from the flagger station. Do not flag from inside your vehicle. Do not flag from the tailgate of your truck. Do not lean on your vehicle while you are flagging. Okay, you need to be, there shouldn't be any equipment or any other folks around you while you're flagging. There should be no confusion of what's going on at the flagger station as those folks are approached, as the drivers, as road users are approaching you. Again, like I said, we want to, you know, mitigate any confusion for the drivers. And if you're surrounded by a bunch of folks and equipment and trucks and, you know, that can throw people off, and, you know, that's when accidents happen. Okay, so flagger station, location, position. There are three critical factors in selecting the flagger station. You need to identify the limits of the workspace. That's going to be determined by your temporary traffic control plan, and that's going to be up to your supervisor or your engineer. They're going to say this is where the location needs to go. This is how much space you need for the workspace in this location. It's not going to be up to you as a flagger usually. You're going to need to determine the speed of the approaching traffic, select the proper buffer space, and measure it from the workspace upstream. So remember, we looked at that table earlier, the buffer space table. So you're going to determine the speed of the approaching traffic, and then you're going to look at that buffer space table and say, okay, it's 55 miles per hour, so the buffer space needs to be X length long from that activity area that my supervisor or engineer determined. Then you're going to select the proper taper length. So if we're going to go with the standard flagger taper, that proper taper length is 50 to 100 feet. Okay. And we said, depending on the speed limit, determines what that length is. So speed limit's 30 miles per hour. Why don't we just go ahead and make that taper 50 feet long? Speed limit's 55 miles per hour. Let's go ahead and make it 100 feet long. check the proper stopping sight distance that is available, and identify your escape route. I haven't talked about an escape route yet, but this is really one of the biggest points, biggest factors for me, for you, the flagger, for you specifically as the flagger out there. You need to have an escape route before you get out there and start controlling traffic. If there's an errant vehicle, you need to be able to get out of the way. That's another reason why I say not to have any vehicles with you. Let's say you're out there flagging and you're sitting you're leaned up on your truck, okay? And you're looking at traffic coming at you, but there's traffic, there shouldn't be anything coming from behind you, but what if there is? And what if that vehicle coming from behind you loses control and you're leaned up against a truck? You're gonna get smashed, okay? You're gonna get turned into a bug. So let's get rid of that vehicle. Let's have you standing out there by yourself. And if there's something coming from behind you or coming at you from, somebody's lost control, you have a way to get away, okay? Similarly, you need to get away, because while you're getting away, you're going to be yelling at everybody else that's working behind you to get out of the way, to watch out. There's an errant vehicle coming. So, don't lean up on a vehicle. There shouldn't be any walls. Flagging on a bridge is a really, really bad idea. I mean, you don't want to have to jump bridge to get out of the way of an errant vehicle. Having an escape route keeps you and everybody else safe. So make sure you have one before you get out there. Okay, so where should you stand? So we are looking at the flagger taper again. And you see these, let me get my pointer out. There's your pointer. These arrows right here. These arrows identify where you as the flagger need to stand, okay? So as traffic approaches, always stand near the shoulder, near the beginning of the taper. Never stand in the open lane. So here, right, you're standing on the shoulder. You're not standing here, or you're not standing here. If your flagger station is here, you're not standing anywhere out here. You want to be on the shoulder. But once the traffic has safely come to a stop at a designated point, then the flagger may carefully step out towards the open lane, but only as far as necessary to view the remaining approaching vehicles. Never stand alongside a stopped vehicle to talk with the driver. All right, so you're the flagger and you're standing right here where this flag is, where this arrow is pointing. Okay, you're on the shoulder. Traffic is approaching you, okay, and that first vehicle is an 18-wheeler, okay, and it's got a trailer attached to it. It's a beast, and it sees you. You see the driver sees you. Right behind that 18-wheeler comes a little tiny Geo tracker, okay, they still make those anymore. Little tiny vehicle. Well, you can't see that tracker and it can't see you, okay? But you need to be able to control all the vehicles that are queuing up behind this 18-wheeler. You, as the flagger, may walk out to the center line, not on the center line, but kind of on, never over, to that center line. Look to see past that 18-wheeler and look at all the drivers queued up behind it. And you can stand there and make eye contact and hold traffic, okay? That is absolutely acceptable. Not over, and only when you can't control traffic from the shoulder, that's allowed. But really, I mean, you want to stay on the shoulder if it's possible. So moving along. So the companion flagger should be in the best location to control approaching traffic. Sufficient distance between the stopping point and the point where the opposing traffic has enough room to smoothly get back into the proper lane should be provided. So essentially, you're out here on the line and you're controlling traffic. You're having to look past this 18-wheeler and you've got traffic controlled. Before you release traffic, you need to be back over here on the shoulder, okay? And we'll get into positioning, what you need to do exactly here in a little bit, but it's okay to be out on the line if you need to stop traffic, but before you release traffic, you need to be back over here. The buffer space, so the buffer space should be extended so that the two-way traffic taper is placed before a horizontal or horizontal curve to provide adequate sight distance for a flagger and queuing of stop vehicles. So, you don't want to have the flagger station, back on behind this curve over here, because as traffic turns, are they going to be able to see you? You're just taking into consideration of what they can see depending on where you are standing, what that driver can see depending on where you're standing. Never stand alongside a stopped vehicle. No conversations with drivers. Answering questions directly is acceptable, but you're not hanging out talking about the game yesterday. You're not, you can answer a question. Hey, what's going on? Oh, we're replacing culvert. Okay, that's it. Not nice ride or any conversation. So here I just kind of included this to reiterate, where you're supposed to stand. So this is there's a flagger here and there's a flagger here that you'll use two flaggers to control traffic in this flagger taper. So one will stop traffic coming this way, one will stop traffic coming this way. We'll talk about that more here in a second, how you do that. But this is where the two flaggers will stand. There are instances, very rare, well, for RDOT, there are very, very, very rare instances where one flagger will control both directions of traffic. Here's where that flagger would stand. We're going to talk about that more here in a second, but utility guys actually end up doing this more, and some of you local municipalities, maybe if you're working on residential streets, it's really the one flagger is really geared towards that more than anything that RDOT does, any kind of highway maintenance. But again, we'll talk about this more in a second. So we've talked about where the flagger should stand, how the flagger should present himself, both in apparel and stature, right? You need to be commanding in stature, and no sitting. And so let's look at some pictures of actual flaggers, and we'll just kind of talk about what they're doing wrong. If this, typically I teach this class like in an in-class presentation, but virtually we're going to have to, I'm going to ask you just to kind of talk amongst yourselves what's wrong with each picture, and I'll explain to you what it is. And if I say something, if I don't say something, you want to chat something, type something in the chat box and just say, hey, what about this? Feel free to. But so, case in point, what's wrong with this picture? Okay. I mean, there is a flagger there, and he is, he's not standing over the center line, but what is he not doing? Well, he doesn't seem to be paying any attention to traffic. He looks like his station is the center line, which that's not where the station should be. The station needs to be on the shoulder. He's got his personal protective equipment on. He's got his jacket on. Looks like he's wearing a hard hat too. So, good for him, but he's not controlling. I don't know if he has any visual communication with any driver. It looks just like he's kind of staring off into space. We've all seen it happen. A driver there might be a driver further down in the queue, and he could just zip around him, and I don't know if he would even know. So, again, visually, you need to be assertive, have visual communication with that driver, look like you're commanding traffic, and that your station is never on that center line. How about this guy here? He looks like I think it's Friday. He's checked out. It's payday. Looks like he's texting on his phone. He's getting some plans going. He's got a date. It doesn't look like he's really much into flagging. He looks really relaxed though, right? Just kicking it in the back of the truck. I don't know if, I took this photo and he's doing everything wrong, including that's socks. Those aren't tennis shoes. So no shoes, shorts, not paying any attention, on his phone, flagging from the back of a truck. Yeah, kind of flagging. He's holding a sign in the back of the truck. That positioning of that truck too, I can't be sure, but it looks like it's really close to where the activity is taking place. Probably needs to be further up away from them. But regardless, I mean, this is none of this is right. Okay, this is all wrong. Now this guy, Hertz. It's an RDOT guy. This Hertz. I took this photo too. Kind of, we've hit on all this already. What do you guys think? He's got his back turned towards us. Looks like he's looking at something, maybe his phone. There's a car coming too. He's not even looking at him. He's really close to his vehicle too. God forbid, thankfully nothing happened, right? But this is a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier. This vehicle is coming here. He's lined up on it. He's hanging out by his truck, not paying any attention. There's not a shoulder to hang out in, but there's still, he still could be out of the roadway more, but there's not really a shoulder. But this vehicle could just come, lose control, right into him, bam, serious injury, if not death. This is wrong. He shouldn't be here. And I hope that district safety officer said so. I can't remember if I said, I'm sure I probably did. Actually, I think this is in District 5. Huh? One of our senior safety officers districts. So again, just all, get familiar with what not to do as well as with what to do. Okay, and I believe this is the last one. At least he's off the shoulder. He's not in the roadway. I'm pretty sure that stop slow staff is not long enough. But here, I think we're looking at a single flagger controlling both directions of traffic. He's not controlling any traffic, but I think that's what's supposed to be happening here. Sitting down, talking on his phone, or looking at maybe he's just looking at his shoes. At least he's wearing shoes. But yeah, just again, not controlling traffic, not being assertive, not being in charge out there. I don't know if I took this photo. I don't think I did take it. I think this was given to me. Yeah, just another really bad example of what, or a really great example of what you shouldn't be doing, or a really bad example of what you should not be doing. That makes sense. Okay. Okay. So what other factors affect you being visible as a flagger? We already kind of talked about you don't want to have your flagger station put around a curve, but you also want to be aware of, hills, shade. It might be tempting to stand in the shade, especially on a hot day, but you're harder to see. Even with that high visibility vest on, you want to stand out of the shade. Color contrast, they bring this up in the MUTCD. If you're wearing orange, try not to stand next to an orange background. I don't know when that happens, but you just, be aware of what you're wearing versus, what your surroundings are. I guess if it's a construction zone with a lot of equipment, a lot of channelizing devices, you could get mistaken for a barrel if one's around. maybe barrels are your channelizing devices. Just be aware of not looking like a barrel when you're out there. Bad weather can affect people being able to see you. Darkness, we already said, if you're nighttime work, there's things you need to do to make yourself more visible at nighttime work. More retroreflective personal protective equipment, being lit from an external source. Then, like I said before, you need to stand alone. Don't let other folks congregate around you. It may seem impolite, but you got to tell folks to get away. I need to stand here alone. I can't, we can't have a big group. It's going to confuse drivers. And when confusion happens, accident happens. Factors that affect stopping sight distance. So even if you're clearly seen, you'll have to allow enough stopping sight distance for vehicles. There are several factors you'll need to consider. As a flagger, where your station is, also of course with signs and channelizing devices, but traffic volume, traffic speed. Obviously, the faster traffic is going, the more room they'll need to stop. Vehicle weight, you need to consider that too. If you're in a place where there's a lot of 18-wheelers, let's say, for an RDOT situation, there might be some trucks hauling lumber. It might be near a place where they're removing a lot of trees, but it's on a rural road. So even if the speed limit is 50 miles an hour, or 45 miles per hour on a rural 2-lane road, if you still have a lot of 18-wheelers coming and going from a lumber yard, you need to take that in consideration. Cross traffic movement, pedestrian traffic and bicyclists, you got to think about them. I ride a bike, and on my bike path, they're putting up some condos, and they have a flagger there. Not a good flagger, but they have a flagger there, and there's a lot of folks riding bikes going right past this where they're building these condos, and that flagger, he's got to control those bikes and pedestrians as well, folks jogging as well. But you got to take everybody that's using that road into consideration. You also need to consider the type of road, road conditions due to weather, visibility. Your visibility, kind of hit on that. Road gradient too. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be considered when you're setting up your flagger station. And this is kind of 101 stuff, but factors affecting the driver's ability, right? We talk about drivers using alcohol and drugs all the time this comes up in a lot of conversations when it talks about roadway safety, when we're talking about roadway safety, alcohol and drugs. Driver's age, right? So drivers, drivers with less experience are less familiar with what signs mean and what they need to do when they approach a temporary traffic control zone. That we gotta take driver's age into consideration. With driver's age comes with driver's experience. On the flip side of that, you get some really old drivers. The sight starts to go and hearing starts to go, and you need all of your senses to drive sometimes, and these can create risk when some of these senses start to fail. Just like with factors that affect you being visible, weather plays into driver's abilities as well. And attentiveness, I think you probably know what I'm going to hit on, but texting is, texting and driving. These are things that you got to think about when you're out there. All right, so now we're going to actually talk about flagger procedures. Okay. So here we have an RDOT employee demonstrating how to signal to stop traffic, how to slow traffic, and how to let traffic proceed. Okay, and we're going to talk about each one in depth. And you know, if this was classes being, you know, taught in person, I'd actually ask you guys to do a little demonstration, but we're going to kind of work around that today. But, you know, just kind of take a minute, look at, you know, this, what is he doing to stop traffic? Where's his position? Where's he standing on the side of the road? What hand is he holding the staff in, or, you know, the stop slow paddle in? What's his other hand doing? Okay. For slow, what's going on here? What are the differences between these two photos? What's happened here? Also proceed. What's going on here? Okay. How has his hands changed from slow to proceed? But these are the 3 basic flagging procedures. This is really, it's all you really need to know to be a flagger. Your hand, I mean, as far as hand gestures and stop slow paddle, holding the stop slow paddle, that's it. Stop, slow, proceed. So here we are. He has got traffic stopped. So to stop road users, face them and aim the stop paddle toward them. Okay, so traffic is approaching him. He's got the stop slow paddle flipped to stop, and he's got his hand out, his free hand out, telling them to stop. Okay, that's it. Got the stop sign showing, hand showing stop. That's all you have to do to get the traffic stopped. Okay, I mean, that in theory, that should be all you have to do. That is, where is he standing? He's standing on the shoulder of the road. He's got stop out closest to the roadway where approaching traffic can see, and he's also motioning to stop. Now, for emergency flagging, it's going to be similar. Okay, so, you know, let's say you have to, the truck dumps its load. You got to get out there and do some emergency flagging. It's the same procedure. It's just instead of that stop slow paddle, you're going to have a stop flag out, and you'll have that. If you can see me, yeah, you'll have that flag holding the staff out, the flag, the flag hanging down, and then stopping with the other hand. Okay. So here we're looking at slowing traffic. Okay. So still, he hasn't changed location. He's still standing on the shoulder. The stop slow paddle is flipped to slow. Okay. And with the free hand, so his, you know, slow is out closest to the roadway. And with the free hand, he's just motioning up and down to slow down. Okay. Really, the slow needs to tell everybody what they should be doing. Everybody should, you know, be able to read and say, you know, in an ideal world, everybody can read and say and see that says slow. But if not, this hand is also telling them slow down. Okay. And proceed. Where's he standing? At the exact same place he's been standing to stop traffic and to let traffic proceed. He's also standing on the shoulder. Nothing changed, right? He's still holding that paddle, the slow side. The only difference is he has, with this free hand, instead of going like this, he's going to go like this. Okay, he's directing traffic into that lane to move. All right. Any questions on any of that? Stacy, we haven't had anybody.
The only thing that we've got in the chat pod or in the questions pod is that someone did recognize one of your what not to do pictures. So they recognized the location. Yeah.
Oh, really? Where was that? Which one was that?
Pea Ridge. And so I'm not sure which picture it was.
I think I know which one it was.
The question came in about the time you were on the RDOT photo. So it's either that one or the one right before it, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. Pea Ridge is District 5, correct?
District 9.
District 9.
It's in-
That's my area. What's my area? It's all right. I get. That may have been why I took the photo. Okay, so but no questions about flagger procedures. So I'm gonna just back up again and go through them one more time, because this is really what you really need to take away from this course is, how do you stop traffic? Okay. How do you let traffic proceed? Or slow down? I'm sorry. How do you let traffic slow down? And how do you let traffic proceed? All right. All right. And lastly, I've hit on this a lot already. I'm going to reiterate one of the biggest. So my big pet peeves, what I would see when I was out there doing safety inspections, doing field inspections, going in, making sure folks are flagging correctly, having an escape route and establishing eye contact. You know, like I said, you need to be able to look the driver in the eye to let them know that you're in control, and if they have eye contact with you, they can see you and you can see them, and then it mitigates the risk of confusion. But you know, so eye contact establishes you as a person in control. It allows you to know if you have the driver's attention. And although extremely difficult, it is your job to control the driver. The best way to do that is to establish eye contact. And even with that, never assume that the driver sees you. You know, I mean, it's a safe assumption that they can, but you can't ever be totally sure. So that's just one more tool in your tool belt as a flagger to establish eye contact to make sure you have control. And what time do we have? 10:39, we have 20 minutes left of this. Let's take a really quick 5-minute break. And we're probably gonna hit right at about 11 today. So it is 10:39, just be back at 10:45, and we'll move along. Okay. All right, welcome back. We should be getting done right at about 11, but we've covered all the big things. So, you know, we just got a few other topics that are a little bit more specific we'll get into. Where am I? Okay, so we have already hit on what this is. You should be able to call it out for what it is just by looking at it. It's the two flaggers controlling one open lane on a 2-lane road, flagger taper. You know, been looking at this, you know, throughout the course, you know, again, this is the most common flagger operation. It is used for projects where the work closes one lane and traffic must alternate use of the other lane. Okay, so these arrows indicate which way traffic is going. This part of the lane is closed down, so the vehicles only have this lane to use. The MUTCD allows several methods of controlling traffic in this situation. Here's the process. Communicate and coordinate with the other flagger. So first off, you gotta decide who the lead flagger is. This person is usually the senior flagger on the job, the person with the most experience, meaning, you know, and also, so you'll identify them within your own group, but it could also be identified within the temporary traffic control plan. Flaggers are usually required to stop and release traffic while traffic control is being set up. Okay, so, you know, these cones might still be getting set up, and you'll be controlling traffic, but you don't start controlling traffic until these advanced warning signs are up. You can't start controlling traffic until you have this flagger man in front of you. All right. The drivers have to know what they're coming up to. And you have to be able to, you have to command that control before you start flagging though. These guys need to be up, these signs need to be up. Either when there is no more traffic in one direction or the allocated time has passed, the coordinator signals to the other flagger to stop traffic. When traffic is cleared, the open lane, the coordinator releases traffic. So this, let's say this flagger here is the lead flagger and controlling traffic. You have traffic coming, he's got them released, it's coming this way, and the last car goes. He throws up the stop paddle, stop any more traffic that might approach, and the flagger over here can then release traffic that's coming this way to go. So then he'll throw his slow sign up and allow traffic to pass. There's more to this, how exactly we do that, and we'll get into that here in a second. Always allow heavy traffic, allow heavy traffic equal turns. Trucks and work vans take longer to stop and block the view of approaching drivers. If it's possible, allow a truck or work van to pass through. Remember how I said that, I gave you that situation where the 18-wheelers right up on that flagger and it's hard to see other vehicles queuing up behind it. It's a good idea to just go ahead and let those bigger vehicles pass. It's better to stop on a geo tracker than to stop on an 18-wheeler, right? Does that make sense? I kind of briefly hit on this. This is the one flagger only situation. RDOT doesn't really do a lot of this, but MUTCD does allow for it. When a single flagger controls both directions of traffic, the flagger should stand on the shoulder opposite the spot lane closure or workspace, or in a position where good visibility can be maintained at all times. But 5 conditions must be met for a single flagger situation. Okay, first, it's got to be a really, really, really short workspace. We're looking here, this is a pretty short workspace. A low volume road, okay? Residential street is probably ideal for something like this. Low speed, again, residential street, low volume, low speed, short duration, okay? You're not gonna be there that long, and really, really good visibility. If one or more of these conditions is not present, then a 2-flagger operation needs to be considered, all right? So again, MUTCD allows for single flagger. There's some specifics that need to be hit on. If you don't hit on all those specifics, then maybe you need to have 2 flaggers. You should, if this is something you want to look into more, consult the MUTCD. You can probably Google MUTCD 1 flagger, and it'll probably take you right to that spec or the general area of where that spec is. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the flagger taper. Okay, so work is often performed over a long section of highway when the flagger at the opposite end is not visible to you. So if you, the flagger here, cannot see the flagger over here, a pilot car may be used to escort vehicles through the work area. You are to stop vehicles in the approved manner as they approach. So just like we talked about earlier, stopping vehicles and detain them until the pilot car arrives from the opposite direction. After stopping the vehicle, move to a position near the center line so they can be easily seen by approaching drivers. So again, you got traffic stopped. You can move out to the center line to control the queue up, right? The queuing of the other vehicles, and allow traffic to come this way. But that traffic is going to be following a truck that says "Follow me" or pilot vehicle, and it's moving traffic through, because we could extend this buffer space and activity area, could extend it miles, and if it was extended miles, these 2 flaggers wouldn't be able to see each other. So that pilot vehicle is going to move folks through that work zone, all right? And once so the pilot vehicle kind of take them through, and the flaggers are probably going to have radios in this situation. And so they'll be communicating that way. So pilot vehicle takes them through, and this flagger radios to this flagger and says, hey, the last car is a white Geo Tracker. I don't know why I'm using Geo Trackers as an example today, but that's what we're going with. I think I saw one come into work and I was like, wow. And so that white Geo Tracker is going to pass, and then that pilot vehicle will come through, and it'll lead traffic going back the other way. And this guy will tell this guy, hey, the last vehicle is a red Honda Civic. And that's how it'll go. All right. So like I just said, handheld radios are ideal in this type of operation. After the pilot car arrives and has pulled into position at the head of your column, wait until the last vehicle has passed your station into the work zone. Then radio to the flagger at the other end of the work zone the description of the last vehicle, color, make, model, etc. Finally, assume your proper position at the flagger station. So, you're doing a lot of things. You're doing several things here. You're not doing a lot, but you are making sure that you're flagging properly, what you're releasing traffic. You're stopping traffic from the center line if you can't control traffic from the shoulder. You're moving back to the shoulder before you release traffic. You have a radio. You're paying attention to that last vehicle that passes. You're paying attention to the pilot vehicle, and you're communicating with the other flagger as well. Any questions? Stacy, do we have any questions about anything that I've just talked about?
We do not have any questions that I'm seeing in the questions or the chat pod at this time.
Okay, great. So everybody knows what I'm talking about. Good. Okay, we're gonna go over some other typical applications. So this is a traffic control at a haul road. Okay, and all these typical applications, this figure 6H-14 haul road crossing TA14, all these typical applications are taken from the MUTCD. And so really a haul road, we're really talking about a construction entrance, okay? And in this case, a single flagger may be used if only one lane is temporarily closed. You're going to stand in a safe spot, usually on the shoulder. You're going to stop traffic as normal. You're basically just, essentially in this type of typical application, you're just stopping traffic to let equipment move in and out of a construction zone. In some areas, be aware that you are there to assist contractors' vehicles into traffic. You're not controlling traffic for the convenience of the contractor. In this typical application, if you're to control traffic at a haul road or construction entrance, the traffic control plan is going to tell you what you need to do while you're out there, what your responsibilities are. Other typical applications we're going to hit on real quick are intersections, surveys, railroad crossings, multi-access point, and nighttime flagging. At an intersection, all right, this is a crazy, wild work zone, and it requires flaggers, not flagger. There's no way a single flagger can control traffic in this type of application. The key to intersections is communication and coordination between flaggers, but really uniformed police officers may be required when enforcement is required. Your job as a flagger is to stop and release traffic. It's not to direct traffic. You're not a police officer. This course does not teach you how to direct traffic at an intersection. You need police academy training to do that. If you are put in this situation, I don't really even come across, RDOT doesn't really control traffic much in this type of situation, but there would be many flaggers involved, and they would all have radios. It would be well coordinated, but there's probably also going to be law enforcement out there to help or direct. Surveys. You may be asked to protect survey crews working in the middle of the road. The figure here shows the setup for surveying along a center line of a low volume road. So the survey crew is going to be set up here. MUTCD only says you need 2 advanced warning signs either direction for survey crews. Your job as a flagger may simply be to just slow traffic down or give them a heads up that the survey crew is out there working. You may have to stop traffic to let the survey guys get their equipment in and out of the roadway. If you find yourself in this situation, this is what that typical application will look like. Railroad crossings. If a train crosses through a temporary traffic control zone, you'll need to monitor the crossing as well. Where queuing of traffic crosses a railroad across a railroad track cannot be avoided, law enforcement officer or flagger shall be provided at the crossing to prevent vehicles from stopping within the crossing. It's my experience, and from what I understand from the section that handles railroad over here at RDOT, a lot of times they provide their own flagger. So they have continuous steady experience with working with railroad crossings and temporary traffic control zones. But, you know, I mean, there are times when the temporary traffic control will cross the railroad. And really the only thing that's, you know, off here is that railroad. From a typical flagger taper, you know, the signs are set the same, flagger's here, there's the flagger set up. You know, I mean, everything looks the same, you just have a railroad cross in the middle of it. And multi-access points, okay? So in this case, we're talking about, you know, in urban areas and some rural, there will be driveways to homes and businesses or even other roads between you and the other flagger. These access points should be controlled or detoured. Inspect the projects for problem areas, including setup, before you begin flagging. All access points need to be controlled by flaggers. So if you have a driveway or if you have a side street that enters your work zone, you need to have somebody controlling that, you know, that side street as well, and everybody communicating, if not visually, then with radios. And nighttime flagging. Driver's vision is greatly reduced at night, making nighttime flagging more dangerous. To alleviate the problem, utilize retroreflective or illuminated signs and channelizing devices, and make sure that you're clearly visible at all times. So we've hit on this, right? Nighttime flagging, your stop slow paddle needs to be, you know, clearly visible. You need to be illuminated. You as the flagger need to be illuminated. Channelizing devices should be retroreflective or internally lit if that's something that you have access to. You know, if you're going to be illuminating the stations, floodlights are commonly used to illuminate the work around the station. Make sure they don't blind oncoming traffic, though. If you're going to be using floodlights, they need to be on you, not in the eyes of the driver. One difference when working as a flagger at night is the use of a flashlight or wand with a red light, and instead of a red flag, or they have these red wands that are eternally lit. And there's different hand procedures for that. They resemble the red flag, though. So when stopping traffic, move the lighted flashlight / wand in sweeping motions back and forth across the front of your legs, kind of like an incomplete pass in football. And so let's talk about emergency vehicles real quick. As a driver, you may have been taught to always give emergency vehicles such as ambulances, police, fire trucks the right of way when driving. The same principle is true when flagging. Basically, you want to allow emergency vehicles to pass as soon as possible. You don't want to, however, lead these vehicles in oncoming traffic. If you're flagging, there's two flaggers and you're communicating with radios because there's a good distance between the two of you, and you've got traffic coming one way and emergency vehicle coming the other way. You know, you want to be really aware of how you're releasing traffic and those emergency vehicles. You don't want to do it simultaneously. You don't want to create another accident when the emergency vehicle is trying to get to another emergency situation. Be alert for emergency vehicles. They have the priority rights. Allow them to pass as quickly as possible. So, you know, it's just communication is key when it comes to emergency vehicles. All right. You know, again, protect yourself with, you know, emergency procedures. You got to protect yourself. You got to protect the workers you're with. Got to have an escape route. Should an errant vehicle head your way, protect yourself first. Get the vehicle description, notify your supervisor. So, should an errant vehicle come your way, you need to run and get out of the way. As you're running to get out of the way, you need to be letting the workers behind you know that there's an errant vehicle coming. A lot of times, air horn, we allow air horns to be used. So if there's an errant vehicle coming, as you're running, hit that air horn and let everybody know what's happening. A whistle, sometimes it's a good idea to have a whistle around your neck to just kind of, blow on it, and as you're getting away, also just yell too, right? But when that happens, if you can, get that description of that vehicle, that errant vehicle, write it down on that pen and paper that I said you could have with you earlier, and give it to your supervisor. Your supervisor will contact the appropriate authorities and let them know. I mean, hey, if you can get the license plate too, that would be ideal. But it's, you get the information, you pass that along, and that gets handled, further up the ladder. So real quick, rules of conduct, don't abandon your post unless somebody there is, to relieve you, unless you're switching out flaggers, but don't just leave. Don't hang out around your vehicle. Don't engage in arguments with, people in vehicles. If they have a question about what's going on, answer that question, but don't get in conversations or arguments. If a driver refuses to obey instructions or that vehicle description, but don't desert your post, get that information and pass it along to your supervisor. When you're not flagging, remove all your signs. You don't want people to associate a flagger sign with a flagger not being there. The flagger sign is up, there needs to be a flagger. You should always be alert for the needs of emergency vehicles and crews as well. They have the right of way, but make sure that the coast is clear before you let them pass. And that is it. So in-person training, I would give a flagger demonstration test, but because we're doing this virtually, I can't really do that. So I'm just going to go through these questions very quickly, talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to give you the answers, but we'll just use this as a review, okay? So where is the flagger station typically located? On the shoulder, out of the roadway at the beginning of the taper, okay? Where should the flagger stand when releasing traffic? Again, on the shoulder, out of the runway at the beginning of the taper. Never want to release traffic when you are standing in the lane. When is it okay for the flagger to cross the center line of the roadway? Never. You never want to cross that center line. You can go up to that center line, but never over it. When is it acceptable to lean against the truck while flagging? Never. Don't ever do that. I'll take your picture. And what is the proper way to deal with a difficult or errant member of the traveling public? What if somebody's giving you a hard time? You always want to be kind and courteous. Don't engage in an argument. Don't get caught up in a conversation. With your pen and paper, record that driver's information, the license plate number, vehicle, and give that information to your supervisor. It gets handled further up the road. All right, that is all I have for today. Sorry we went a little over. I will try not to go over tomorrow. Same time, same place, and we will be going over temporary traffic control in greater detail. If there's any questions about today, ask now or ask me tomorrow. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day. Stacy, no questions?
No questions at this time, no. So think of all your
Okay.
questions and be ready to ask them tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.